Hey, Course 3, Lesson 12, doing all things decimal, percent, fraction, naming decimals to start here. If I have the number 105, I say it like that, 105, right? What if there's a decimal point in front of this? Now how do I say it? Just like we started, 105. Then you look at this last digit, and you end with whatever place value that is. You can use page 78, bookmark it if you like, for the decimal place values, names, and which place value is my 5 in. 3 to the right of the decimal point looks like thousandths. Remember to get that sound at the end. The thousandth. So how do I say it? 105 thousandths. Now if I had a number in front of that, like 12, I say 12 just like I do when I don't have the decimal. I say 12. For this part, I say and 105 thousandths. Say it again with me. 12 and 105 thousandths, okay? I'm going to expect that now in class instead of 12.105 or 12.105. I'm going to expect 12 and 105 thousandths. Or if I've got this, okay, it's not 3.02, it's 3 and 2 hundredths, because this is the hundredth place. All right? And that is a nice little cheat sheet there too. They show what's the fraction equivalent to each of those. If it's in the tenths place, you divide by 10. If it's in the hundredths place, it's really over 100. So if I wanted to show this too, what this value is in a fraction instead of a decimal, I'd put 2, or if you want to show 0 too, that's fine, over 100. Or 1/50th, right? That's the same as 0.02, 2 hundredths. Did some quick conversion there with you. Now, what if I wanted to accomplish example 2? It says order these numbers from least to greatest. 5 tenths, 41 hundredths, 5 hundredths, 405 thousandths. Might not be so obvious just by the way they look or sound. So we line up the decimal just like we do when we add. Now that the decimal's in order for all of them, then we look from the leftmost digit going this way to decide what's the least. Which one's the least of all of these numbers? 0, right? So this one goes first. That's the least. 5 hundredths. Sorry, the 0 does hold a place. Okay, let's get rid of my marking so we can see. Now let's look at the next digit. Well, now the next smallest is not going to be the top one because 5 is big. But we have to look between these two and decide which one's the next smallest. So we look at the second digit. We already know the 5 is the biggest because it had no match in the first digit. The first digit holds the most value. So that's on the far right, while the 0.05 is on the far left. Now we look at the second digit. Which one's the biggest? Which one's the smallest? Here's the next smallest, right? So, oh wait, never mind. You gotta look at this one. 0 is smaller. So it's 405 thousandths comes next. Then the 1, so 41 hundredths. And then we said this was the biggest one, the 5 tenths. So that's in order from least to greatest, okay? Moving right along. Naming a decimal number also helps to name our fraction, like 12.25. How do we say that? We say 12 and 25 hundredths. Say that again out loud. 12 and 25 hundredths. Well, You just said your answer. If you're converting to fractions, simply say it out loud the way you've learned. And you get 12 and 25 over 100. 12 and 25 hundredths. Remember to reduce. 12 and 1/4. Decimal to fraction is really just say it out loud, right? Example 3. Name each decimal number. 2 and 8. Those are the tenths place. 2 and 8 tenths. So I'd write it 2 and 8 tenths, because they say now write it as a reduced fraction, which equals 2 and 4/5. 75 hundredths. Reduce that down. That's going to eventually be 3/4. Now that reminds me, let's try going from fraction to decimal, which I don't think we've really done yet. Fraction to decimal, well, what do we know about the fraction bar? It implies an operation. This bar implies that we're going to do this. And how do we read it? 3 divided by 4. Divided by 3 divided by 4. So we're going to need a decimal because 3 is smaller. It is less than 1 after all. 4 doesn't fit into 30 or 3, but it does fit into 37 times. Drop the 0. It's an even 75. 75 hundredths is the same as 3/4. Okay? So we performed division. 3 divided by 4. How about 4 tenths make it a fraction? Okay, we just said it out loud. 4 tenths. Which is 2/5. So if I said find 4.4 of 200 cars, I would just change this into a fraction and multiply like we've learned. 2/5 times 200 is 400 over 5. Do the division. Is that 120? No. 80? Feel free to check my math. How about 0.4 make it a percent? What percent is 0.4? 4 tenths is what in percent? We're going from tenths to hundredths, so multiply by 10, I guess. Really all we're doing is decimal to percent means multiply by 100, like we did last time with the fractions. And when you multiply 100, really all you're doing with a decimal number is moving the decimal to the right twice. Because what are we doing when we multiply? We're making a number bigger, so that we go from 4 to 40. When changing a decimal to percent, simply multiply by 100, which means to move the decimal to the right twice. What if I was changing 40% to a decimal? Now what we're doing is moving the implied decimal here 2 times again because it's 100, but now we're dividing by 100. So it's to the left. Turn a percent into a decimal, you move the decimal twice to the left. Let's do it with 8%. Move the decimal twice to the left. Well, there's only one number. What do? You still go twice. You fill that spot in with a 0. Okay? Hope we're doing well so far. That gets us almost through everything here. Read over the rest if you're unsure about anything, but I think by incorporating everything we just talked about, you should be able to solve all of these. Let's do D, G, K, O, R, T. It's quite a few, but we're doing these down the middle, R, and T. Okay? Thank you so much.